Hello everyone, excuse me, welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another little session of Subaru Forester STI ramblings, if you like, for want of a better word. So, just recently got my Forester back from the garage, and I've been having a few problems with the brakes ever since I've owned this car. I've had it 4 years this November. I've done 50,000 miles in it. I bought it on about 76,000 miles, 77,000 miles. It's now on 127,000 miles. And ever since I've owned it, I've always had problems with the brakes. So I thought it would be good to put together some advice, some of the areas that I've asked mechanics to research or look into or examine, repair, improve, etc, etc, and just have a little discussion about the journey and what I've discovered along the way, and hopefully some little tips and pointers and things to look out for, things that will help you have a better time with a Forester STI, and in particular the standard Brembos that fit into these cars from standard. So here's the journey that I went on. So essentially, when I bought the car, you know, I looked through the service history and noted that it had, or on the advert it said it had recently new brakes. So when I first got the car, you know, the brakes, they were all right, but there was a small amount of steering wheel shudder. So obviously, immediately that says to you that the brakes are on the way out, they're warped, or they've had a hard life. And you know, standard human behaviour in that situation, you think to yourself, right, let's just throw some new discs on. So I had a little look around and bought, you know, a mildly uprated set. I wasn't overly fussed about having Brembos again. I just thought, you know, I was going to stick with the Brembo calipers, obviously, but it didn't have to be genuine Brembos. And I've tried EBCs in the past on my Fiesta Turbo and always had quite good success with them. Anyway, so I got Godspeed G-hooks. You know, they've been quite well recommended and reviewed on the forums, etc, etc. So I got a local mechanic, not a Subaru specialist, but I got a local mechanic to put on a set of Godspeed G-hooks and whatever Godspeed recommended in terms of pads, all round. And you know, the mechanic, as I say, not a self-confessed expert in Subarus, but he was a ex-Lotus engineer. This was a high-end garage. They were like £90 an hour. That was their going rate, which, you know, you hope the person knows what they're doing. And he had a few problems bleeding them, and apparently, you know, there's a bit of a art to bleeding Brembos, because you have two bleed ports, I think, on the fronts. So you have to go top one side, top one another side, and go round in like you know, asymmetrical. But yeah, so got them bled. They felt nice. I drove the car, everything felt wonderful. Stopping power was good, but within 2,000 miles, started to get a little bit of feedback through the steering wheel again, and that got progressively worse. So I'll call that, for the sake of the record and for this discussion, that's like year one, set of brakes one. Yeah. So car, then I started looking around to find a Subaru specialist near me. I live in Essex, in the UK. So found a Subaru, a fairly well-renowned Subaru specialist near me, and asked him to do, you know, service, a couple of other bits and bobs, standard fits, white line goodies, Haven's got exhaust, blah blah blah. Went in for some of the mods that you will have seen on my other videos, but also asked him to pay particular attention to the brakes and to have a look, see what's going on with the brakes. So they all come off, went straight back to Godspeed. Godspeed took pictures of the backs of the brakes and said, you know, whoever installed them hasn't cleaned up the surfaces, because the brakes, even though they're only like 2,000, 3,000 miles old, the brakes were covered in rust. So clearly whoever installed them first time hadn't cleaned up the hub surfaces. You know, good practice when you're fitting new brakes, clean up the hubs, wire brush the hubs, whatever else is involved, degrease them, put a bit of copper slip on, and put the new brakes on, because any imperfections, as I've since discovered, is going to cause potentially high, low spots, etc., and eventually warp your discs. So Godspeed kindly refaced the discs free of charge, gave them back, certified puckaroony again. I asked the Subaru specialist to pay particular attention to ensure that the pistons on the Brembos were sliding in and out, and the pads were sliding in and out correctly, because I always felt that one or two, maybe all, I don't know, it felt like maybe some of the pistons were dragging, because occasionally, you know, I'd get a sensation, it felt like the handbrake was on one click. You know, after a long journey, it would feel like one of the, you know, like I say, like your handbrake was on one click, or, you know, the pads were dragging or something, you'd stab the brakes and it'd be back to normal. Anyhow, so after the Subaru specialist refitting the resurfaced discs, everything once again was good in the world and everything felt good. Again, after sort of 2,500, 3,000 miles, same thing again. A bit of feedback through the steering wheel, just got progressively worse and worse and worse, and I'm starting to lose the will to live with it. You know, wonderful car, I love the car, goes like stink, sounds lovely, very, very reliable, nice place to be, etc., etc., as I've said in my other videos. But the brake situation was just highly upsetting. Anyway, so always had an interest on the forums with people discussing brakes, etc., etc. Excuse me, and saw some recommendations on the Forester UK Owners Forum on Facebook, suggesting that the Brembo, a good standard setup for these is Brembo genuine high carbon standard discs and porter-filled pads. So occasionally on Eurocar parts they'll be having like Easter weekend deals, etc., etc. You can get the set discs front and back for, like, let's say around about 400 quid. So I went with them, got them in stock in my you know, my possession, and then also again reading advice on the forum, people suggested trying porter-filled pads. Now, porter-filled pads are about £300 a set, so I'm in for 700 quid, pads and discs, and got them fitted by another Subaru expert, and again said I felt that there'd always been a slight problem with one or other or all of the brake pads dragging, so the calipers not releasing, the pistons sticking in the calipers. So as well as having new discs, new pads, we also sent off the calipers to a pretty well renowned and well recommended caliper rebuilder. Anyway, within 2 or 3 days of them receiving the calipers, they said one of them, the bolts that hold the calipers together is so stuck on they can't undo it. They're frightened that when they undo it, it's going to strip, and then because where the bolt hole's drilled is so near to the edge, there's no possibility of re-helicoiling it. I believe that to be the rears, I don't know, I can't remember. Anyway, so then I had to buy, next idea, buy a set of second-hand knackered Brembos, just purely as a donor set to get refurbished. So I did that. I think second-hand pair of calipers was 500 quid. Send them off, get them refurbished, come back, look wonderful, new stickers, not ideal, rather it was stenciled on, but anyway, gold paint looked nice, good colour match, and they're certified, new seals on all the pistons, and excuse me, in theory, everything's going to be good. And at this point, you know, the refurb was 650, the donor calipers were 5, and the Porterfields and the high carbon discs were 7. So we're looking at around about 2 grand with labour. Okay, so they went on, and I can agree that the stopping power, wonderful, sounded wonderful, everything felt nice and tight, and everything was rosy. Again, well, this will be like the 3rd installation. Okay, the 2nd set of discs and pads that I bought outright, but the 3rd installation overall. As I say, always reminding the fitter that, you know, I've had problems in the past, this needs additional due care and attention, making sure the pistons are sliding in and out accordingly, the pads are releasing, therefore not creating additional heat on the discs, etc, etc. And once again, within 2,000 to 3,000 miles, exactly the same scenario again. Loads of feedback through the steering wheel. Again, I'm frustrated to the max, starting to think, you know, if this can't be resolved, you know, when you start thinking, I just want to drive the car off a cliff, because it removes all the, any pleasant, any enjoyment you're getting from the car is all removed. Because if every time you press the stop pedal, you're shaking around, steering wheel shaking around, stuff's rattling around in the boot, oh, it's just not nice, and it removes, takes that fun factor out of driving. Anyway, fast forward to this year, and met a new mechanic, local, someone I've known for years, not a Subaru specialist, just a regular day-to-day mechanic, and they have taken full charge and responsibility for everything I ever need to do it to the Forester. Now, so, rightly or wrongly, and people will think I'm insane and it's just throwing good money after bad, but I bought another set of standard Brembos, a 3rd set, and another set of just box standard Brembo pads, whatever Euro car parts recommended when I do a registration plate lookup on Euro car parts. Okay, so with the standard pads, from memory, I think you're looking at £500 to £600 discs and pads. And I said to the mechanic, because, you know, I have a good relationship with him, I said, look, I explained what I've explained here, and I explained the woes I've had with the brakes and my concerns and what I believe may be the problem, possibly the pads dragging and creating excess heat and subsequently warping the discs before they should. You know, I don't brake hard, I don't cane the life out the car all the time, I don't drive it like I've stolen it all the time, but occasionally I do enjoy going fast, and occasionally I do press the brakes hard. I always go through you know, a decent type of bedding in procedure. I don't just get new brakes and then hang on them like I'm on my last lap of the Nürburgring. You know, I think I exhibit good mechanical sympathy, should we say. I believe that mechanical sympathy goes a long way. Anyway, so I had to go over everything with a fine tooth comb, check hub run out, check track rod ends, tyre rod ends, wheel bearings, check the action of the pistons. So everything's rosy, they say. New pads and discs all round this year, and so 4th time, 3rd set, 3rd full set, 4th time. Put on the car this summer along with a load of other mods as per normal. I do like my white line stuff. Also had Meister R's, new white line roll, I think it's called a roll production kit or something. Didn't slam the car much when I had the white line fitted, the Meister R's fitted, probably 10mm all round, maybe a little bit more at the front just to level the car out. So I didn't go mad. Oh, it's the white line roll centre correction kit I had put on. and another strut brace on the back. So you know, these things, lots more white line gear, roll centre correction kit, front and rear strut brace, Maestraz all round set, pretty soft, about halfway. You know, all these things do exacerbate, you know, your feedback from the road, your feedback in the steering wheel. And I guess if you're going to have brake problems, you're really going to know about it, because everything's a bit more stiff. Anyhow, as I'm sure you can imagine I'm going to say, after 2,000 to 3,000 miles, hello, starting to get a bit of brake cheddar again. Now, what has always been weird about it is, when you drive slowly, it's not terrible. When you drive normal, like a normal average everyday person doing the speed limit, 30 to 30, 40 to 40, 50 to 50, 70 to 70, etc, etc, just carrying regular kind of pace, braking is just awful. So moderate use of the brake pedal, awful, shuddering, terrible. However, when you brake really, really, really hard, just on the cusp of engaging the ABS, fine, smooth as silk, stop from like 70 to 0, lovely. Anyhow, so the car went in a couple of weeks ago, and I was, you know, absolutely at the end of my tether. Check everything. So discs come off. They haven't done more than 2,000 miles, so it's like, get them discs off, get them to the local engineers, get them to check the run out. And they found that the insides of one of the fronts was worn 2 thou more than the outside. So clearly there's a problem. We're getting uneven wear, which is an issue. Anyway, so I had the brake discs re-skimmed, everything's equal, even, smooth, true, etc, etc. I put it back on. Mechanic said, oh, I'm going on holiday, you're going to have the car back, but I haven't got to the root of the problem. This is sending massive alarm bells to me. Can't re-skim the discs, give it back and say, but we haven't got to the root of the problem. And I'm thinking, yeah, but surely as I drive it, it's going to ruin the discs again. Anyhow, so I was on holiday for 2 weeks, so at the same time as the mechanic, coincidentally, so I tried to keep the mileage off the car, and the car went in for the sort of remedial work, if you like, just to go over everything with a fine tooth comb in the braking department. We now know the front, one of the fronts is experiencing uneven wear. So went in, and just to my most recent video you'll have seen about the Subaru was just, I put a video together for a fellow enthusiast just to show him how the Tegiwar brake booster fitted. When I was making that video and I was scrubbing through, as you do, to sort of quality assure your video, I noticed that there was a little weep on the top of the master cylinder. So when it went into the garage for a full check over, I said, you know, I think I supplied new hell braided brake hoses just in case any of the brake hoses were breaking down inside, and that was causing the uneven pistons and therefore uneven brake wear. So we had new braided brake hoses, another, even though I only had the pistons, the foot calipers refurbished 2 years ago, another Brembo genuine front caliper piston seal rebuild kit. So those two components were going on, and I also said, have a look at the master cylinder. There's a little bit of a weep on that, and also while doing the brake hoses, obviously you're going to need to bleed the system, and having new hydraulic fluid can only be a good thing. If you're having braking problems, great, tick that box as well. So goes into the garage. The mechanic's been kind enough to be keeping contact with me, close contact with me all week. Excuse me. First thing he said is front wheels, both front 30 grams out of alignment. So, you know, not groundbreakingly bad, but, you know, let's get things right. You know, let's go through, tick the boxes from cheap to expensive, as you normally do when you're trying to troubleshoot an issue. So done that. Balance, perfect. Then started cracking open the calipers. When one of the calipers was on the bench, found that one of the, even though it's had a rebuild, one of the seals on one of the the pistons was absolutely mangled. So whether that's got folded over when it's been fitted or not, never been seated properly, I don't know. However, so that the seals got changed, and we did the seals on both, so that all calipers front are perfectamundo. Anyway, whilst working on the calipers on the bench, the engineer or the mechanic noticed that one of the fronts had been helicoiled, and the helicoil was half hanging out, so it wasn't the bolt wasn't, whilst it would go in and it'd look on the surface of it like it was holding it together, it wasn't holding the calipers together evenly. So if you imagine this situation, the top was tight, the bottom was never quite tight enough, no matter what you did with the bolt. Therefore, you know, we think that was the root of the uneven wear, because the lower piston could never apply like fully even pressure. So that was drilled out, re-helicoiled. So we've had hoses, check, piston seals, check, sorted out, identified a problem with the helicoiling and drilled it out, re-helicoiled it, put in a new bolt. Calipers bolt up nice and tight. And then obviously bleed the system, and in bleeding the system and changing the fluids, also fixed the slight weep on the master cylinder. Now, I only got the car back yesterday, and I've probably done 50 miles since then, but it is like a different car. Go figure. You know, all of those different attempts by those different people to get to the root of the problem. When a client goes in and says, look, I'm having terrible trouble with the car, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4th time, right, you know, this needs to be a masterclass of brake installation. I've always said, I don't care about the cost. If it takes double the amount of time, let's just get it right. Yeah, I don't care. The money, no object. You know, I should have said at the beginning of this discussion, yeah, I'm not a mechanic, but I am technically minded. You know, I'm a button pusher by trade. I earn reasonable money. I can't work on the car at home. I have nowhere dry to get it up in the air or in a ramp and have it pulled apart and off the road for a week. And my feeling is, you know, I stick to what I do good, and I earn decent money doing it. And I'm happy to pay an expert to fix the problem. Anyway, so the moral of the story is really, you know, you need someone that's enthusiastic enough and motivated enough and knowledgeable enough and understands what you're telling them to go through with a fine tooth comb all the aspects that can possibly make a car eat brake discs and brake pads. Geometry, alignment, wheel bearings, tyre rods, track rods, issues with the calipers, issues with the pistons, dirt on the hub surface, hub run out. The list goes on and on and on. So hopefully, you know, this will give someone who's maybe experiencing problems with their Brembos or inadequate brake performance on their Forester STI, some guidance or a checklist of things that you can look at or ask your mechanic to look at. Again, standard problem diagnosis tree. You know, start with the cheap things, change fluid, check the operation of the pistons, you know, and brake lines. Start with those easy things before you start looking at oh, let's just throw new calipers on, because calipers are silly money. I had thought during this process, I had thought about getting case ball disc calipers all round. But the thing that stopped, they were, you know, talking about £3 grand, I suppose, front and back for the good quality set, something comparable to a set of Brembos. But the thing that kept making me want to make the Brembos work is because when you buy a Forester STI, you want the 300 brake horsepower engine, you want the Subaru burble, you want the STI componentry suspension, and in particular, you know, if you've not had Brembos before, or you're a fan of Brembos, you want those great big gold calipers hanging out the front of the wheels, you know, because they look good and they say this car means business. So, and also I suppose I've always wanted to keep the car OEM where possible, and keep it factory standard, because at the end of the day the car's an investment. I love the car, it's my daily driver, I don't intend to get rid of it, but one day I might have to, or I might choose to, and I want it to be standard, so modifying the brakes wasn't something I wanted to do. So I've always had it in mind, we've got to get the Brembos working properly. One thing I'd also say, just as a little tip, is that because they say that, you know, the Brembos are aluminium, the bolts are steel, you'll always end up with some kind of, you know, like that metal chemical reaction between the two metals, and they end up binding themselves together. A lot of mechanics I've talked to have said, you know, they're a nightmare, you know, like once that happens they're always a bugger to get apart. With that in mind, it's worth saying to your mechanic once a year, once every 2 years, get them all apart, get them greased, make sure everything's moving and working. If you're intending to keep the car 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year longer, just put that as part of your maintenance routine, you know, just to make sure that everything's functioning, because, you know, I would hate anyone to be in the same position 3-4 years down the line where you go to work on them because one's got a problem and you think everything's stuck, because then it does become a massive problem. Anyway, with what was done to the car last week, it feels like a new car. Obviously the slight balance, lovely. How that's happened I don't know. I'm not ready for tyres yet and I've never hit a curb, but anyway, having them not 30 grams out of alignment and having them in perfect alignment, nice. Brakes feel wonderful, pedal response feels wonderful, I'm not getting any shudder whatsoever. Maybe I'll update this video in 3 months time or 6 months time, but hopefully that gives you some helpful pointers of things to look out for on Forester STI Brembos. Right, anyway, I wish everyone a wonderful day or wonderful evening or wonderful weekend, and look forward to seeing you soon. Oh, and the next video, which is in planning, in my head at least, I'm going to go through all the mods that I've done to the car. Everything. Stereo, key fob upgrade, suspension, white line goodies, brakes, a few little bits and bobs on the engine, maintenance schedule, cleaning schedule, interior, the whole works, absolutely everything, just to bring everyone up to speed with where I am now and what my journeys look like so far, what's in the route map for the future. Alright, so thanks again for watching everyone, take care, bye bye. Hi again, sorry, I just wanted to add, I was just reviewing my video and I've remembered a couple of things. I might have mentioned accidentally that it's the wheels out of alignment. It wasn't the wheels out of alignment, it was the out of balance. So it's the balance that was causing a small amount of steering wheel shudder, and the balance was, the wheels were rebalanced to perfection, and that's resolved that issue. And the other thing I was going to say was, during the investigation this year, during the 4th attempt at fitting the 3rd set of discs, initially my mechanic told me that he thought the problem might have been related to the handbrake. So the car had a whole rear handbrake rebuild kit, you know, springs and fixtures and fittings, etc, etc. And while he was doing that, he said, oh, the backs are knackered as well, you know, like the little the cover that stops the spray off the road and salt and grit and grime getting on the discs, they're knackered, so we had them as well. So I had brand spanking new genuine Subaru rear brake disc backs and handbrake rebuild kit. Needless to say, it wasn't that, but just for total completeness of this video, I thought I'd mention that as well. And you know, it has made the operation of the handbrake 100 times better than it was when I first had it. So that is another thing that got missed by the first install, the second install, the third install, etc, etc. So it's just, you know, like I say, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, looking at everything, going through the components with a fine-tooth comb. Right, thank you, cheers, bye-bye.